My wife left me after 25 years for a younger man and shattered my life. But finding $37 million in Bitcoin helped me take revenge and start over stronger. Burfy, you heard me, Arthur. Just sign the papers and you're done, Annie said. She sat across the kitchen table, but her voice felt distant, like it was echoing from another room. It started that afternoon. I came home from work to find her already seated, a half-empty bottle of Chardonnay and a single wine glass in front of her. She didn't pour one for me. Her expression was set, cold, and resolved. I knew then this wasn't a conversation but a final decision. I sat down across from her. She didn't ask how my day was. No greeting, no hesitation, just, "I'm leaving you, Arthur." She had found her soulmate. His name was Paul, someone from work who made her heart sing. The phrase landed like a slap. After 25 years, 2 kids, and a paid-off house, I was suddenly unnecessary. I should have felt something, rage, despair, but mostly I felt numb. Her words blurred, distorted, like she was underwater. Our life flashed in fragments. High school sweethearts, college, Sally born 6 months after the wedding, solid jobs, mortgage paid off, vacations, photo albums, decent savings. We said, "I love you," maybe out of routine, but we said it. We were a quiet, steady pair. I thought we were still headed toward retirement together, but not anymore. She kept talking. Justifications, blame, explanations. Arthur, look at me." It took effort to meet her eyes. The kitchen looked dim, though the lights were on. I felt detached, like I was watching someone else live this. "You must sign these," she said, jabbing at the divorce papers in front of me. Her voice sliced through my haze, but I still couldn't move. She grew more agitated, her face twisting with anger. Then she slapped me. It wasn't the sting I remember, but the idea of it, the certainty of the mark it left. Still, I didn't react. I couldn't. She grabbed her purse. The door shut behind her. Through the window, I watched her taillights fade. Moments later, another car pulled up. She got in without hesitation. It didn't linger, just turned the corner and disappeared, taking her to Paul, to whatever life she'd planned, leaving the papers behind like a final act. The silence was the first thing that hit me. Usually, coming home from uni meant background noise. The TV murmuring, dad puttering in the garage, mom on the phone. Today the house felt unnervingly still, holding its breath. Lights blazed in the kitchen and living room, painting sterile squares on the lawn as dusk settled. Dad's practical sedan was in the driveway, but Mom's SUV was gone. Unease prickled my skin. "Dad? Mom?" My voice sounded too loud in the quiet. Dropping my heavy backpack onto a dining chair with a thud, I walked toward the kitchen, the source of the light, and stopped dead. Dad was sitting at the table, exactly where I'd often find him reading the paper, but utterly, terrifyingly still. He wasn't reading. He wasn't looking at anything. His gaze was fixed on some point beyond the kitchen wall, his eyes wide, unfocused, almost milky, like a doll's eyes. Dried tracks, like tears that had evaporated, stained his cheeks. A thin thread of saliva escaped the corner of his slack mouth, darkening a patch on his shirt. On the table before him lay a stack of crisp documents littered with bright yellow signer flags. Across from him, my mother's favorite Chardonnay stood open, the glass beside it almost empty. A panic seized me, cold and sharp. "Dad!" Reached out, my hand trembling, and touched his shoulder. "Dad! Hey!" No response, not a twitch. I rounded the table, crouching to look directly into his face. The blankness there stole my breath. "Dad! Dad, wake up! Dad!" Tears welled, hot and urgent. I shook his shoulder gently at first, then harder. Nothing. A strangled sob escaped me. "Okay, Sally, breathe. Slow down. Dad needs help." My fingers fumbled with my phone, dialing 911. My voice shook as I explained. My father, Arthur Smith, unresponsive. I gave my name, our address. They were sending an ambulance, maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes felt like an eternity. I sank into the chair beside him, taking his cold, limp hand in mine. I spoke to him softly, nonsense mostly, reassurances that everything would be okay, trying to project calm I didn't feel. This man, my steadfast, reliable father, worked long hours as an accountant but never missed a school play, a recital. He endured my screeching violin practice for years, always encouraging, never complaining. For my 16th birthday, he'd saved up and bought me a Hofner violin. Not the finest instrument, but miles better than my student models and precious because he gave it to me. Now, studying music at university, focusing on strings, I had better instruments. But that Hofner held a piece of my heart. Seeing him like this, broken, shattered something inside me. Why was he like this? What could possibly... My gaze fell again on the papers. The bold type at the top jumped out, petition for dissolution of marriage. What the actual hell? My blood ran cold. I snatched up the top page, scanning the dense legal jargon. My mother wanted to divorce my father. The wine glass, Dad's state, the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. She dropped this bomb on him, watched him shatter, and then just left. The car being gone wasn't just running an errand. She left him like this. Her emotion is a strange, volatile thing. One moment I was consumed by fear for my dad, the next, a wave of icy fury toward my mother washed over me, extinguishing any lingering warmth or compassion. How could she? Headlights swept across the kitchen window, the ambulance. Relief warred with a cold knot of anger in my gut. They were efficient, professional, loading Dad onto a gurney, checking vitals. I followed in my car after locking the house. His stillness, a terrifying image, burned into my mind. On the drive, I made the calls. Grandma, Dad's mom, Aunt Rhonda, his sister, Uncle Jim, his best friend Tom, his manager at work, explaining Dad would be out indefinitely. Each call was a fresh wave of explaining the inexplicable, found him unresponsive, hospital, don't know why yet. Everyone promised prayers, asked for updates. Tom assured me he'd handle emergency leave. The last call was the hardest. I dreaded it. The anger simmering just below the surface, but she had to know. I dialed her number. It rang twice before she picked up, her voice infuriatingly breezy. "Hello, Sally, my dear. How was your day?" Wow, just wow. The casualness was grotesque. An hour, maybe more, had passed since I found him. She knew my class schedule, knew I'd be home, knew what I would find. "Where are you, Mom?" My voice was tight, strained. A slight pause. I left your father, Sally." The calculated understatement ignited the fuse. You left him? You mean you detonated his entire world, watched him collapse, and just walked out? Is that the leaving you mean? "Oh, honey, no," she protested, a false note of solicitude in her voice. "I tried to explain about Paul, about us, but he just shut down, didn't react. I thought it best to give him space, let him process." Process? Mom, he wasn't processing, he was catatonic. Did you even check on him? Did you care that you utterly destroyed him, your husband, my father, and then abandoned him when he was vulnerable? The words tore out of me, raw and furious. Are you really that heartless? Do you have any idea what's happening right now, or is it just inconvenient for your little romantic getaway? Sweetie, don't use that tone, she chided, attempting maternal authority. I know this is a shock, but your father will be fine. He's stronger than you think. I'm only asking for what's fair, what's mine, and some support until Paul and I can get married. Lost touch with reality completely. Fair? You think any part of this is fair and fine? I'm following the ambulance, taking Dad to the hospital right now, Mom. When I found him, he looked like he'd had a massive stroke thanks to you. Oh, Sally, my dear, I'm so sorry to hear that, but briefing no buts, Mom, no damn buts. I cut her off, shaking with rage. Let me ask you something. This Paul, is he the same Paul from your work? The one you never shut up about? A telltale hesitation. Yes, darling. So, let me guess. He's what, 10, 12 years younger than you? And how long exactly has this singing heart bullshit been going on? Another pause. Longer this time. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deceit, clandestine meetings. So, for 6 months, you've been screwing a coworker behind Dad's back. Lying to him, lying to me, hiding this affair. I had no idea you were capable of being such a calculating, selfish mom. And clearly neither did Dad, judging by the state you left him in. How in God's name did you think any of this would end well? That we'd just, what, be happy for you? Brooke. Well, I didn't expect you to be happy at first, she conceded, incredibly. But once you see Paul and me together, once we settle in, you'll understand. We're meant to be. Did she actually think I would leave my devastated father to move in with her and her home-wrecking boy toy? The sheer audacity choked me. We? There is no we, Mom. Not anymore. Understand this. I am staying with Dad, and there isn't a chance in hell I'm coming anywhere near you or that Paul. Sally Ann Smith, her voice sharpened, indignant. I am still your mother. You will not speak to me like that, no matter how upset you are. Then I guess we're done talking, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Before she could utter another word, I stabbed the end call button. My hand was shaking. She tried calling back immediately, multiple times, then started calling Dad's phone, which was ludicrous. Even if he had it, he wouldn't answer. I had his phone in my bag. I silenced her calls, letting them go to voicemail, each unanswered ring a small, bitter satisfaction. Waking up was like surfacing from immense pressure deep underwater. There was a dull ache behind my eyes, a stiffness in my neck. The first sensation was warmth, soft lips pressing against mine, a gentle, hesitant kiss, yet imbued with a tenderness I hadn't felt from Annie in years. Then the clinical beeping of machines registered, the sterile smell of antiseptic. I groaned, a low sound of discomfort as muscles protested movement. My eyes fluttered open, expecting Annie, perhaps contrite, perhaps still angry. Instead, Tina Williams, my boss, stood there, pulling back slightly, a look of startled surprise, morphing into concern on her striking face. Beyond her, Sally and my sister Rhonda rushed forward from the other side of the bed. "Dad! Oh, thank God you're awake!" Sally's voice was thick with relief. "Brooke, easy, Arthur. You're okay." "You're safe," Rhonda added, her hand resting reassuringly on my arm. Memories flooded back then, disjointed but horribly clear. Annie's pronouncement, the divorce papers, the receding world, the slap, her leaving. The finality of it settled like a cold stone in my gut. She wasn't just leaving, she was gone. What? What happened? My voice was hoarse, unused. Over the next hour, the three women pieced together the nightmare, Sally finding me unresponsive, calling emergency services, the divorce papers revealing Annie's months-long affair, Annie's subsequent callousness, her threats to Tina over frozen finances, her complete lack of inquiry about my condition. "Kebra, how long?" I managed to ask. 2 weeks, Arthur," Rhonda answered gently. "You've been unresponsive for 2 weeks. Briga, 2 weeks? Lost time?" My eyes found Tina's, remembering the kiss. "Tina, did you—" Hebra, she blushed, becoming pink, spreading across her high cheekbones. "Yes, sorry, Arthur. I was just heading back to the office, saying goodbye." Shribrief, a weak smile touched my lips. "No, it's okay." Pretty effective wake-up call. Maybe even nice. A strange thought under the circumstances. Guess I'm back on the market, huh? The attempt at humor felt brittle. Brush. The following hours were a blur of medical personnel. Doctors poked and prodded. Nurses drew blood, wheeled me off for MRIs and cognitive tests. Tina canceled her afternoon meetings, staying put alongside Sally and Rhonda. A psychologist came by, asking gentle questions. I recounted the confrontation with Annie, the sensory shutdown, the feeling of paralysis, the slap. The detail about her hitting me while I was incapacitated drew sharp intakes of breath from Sally, Rhonda, and even Tina, whose expression hardened ominously. "Brookie, Dad, what time do you think she confronted you?" Sally asked, her brow furrowed. "Brooke, around 5, I guess." "Why, honey?" "Brookie, because I got home after 7:30, she said grimly. "She must have left you alone like that for over 2 hours. "Brie," the psychologist nodded gravely. "It's not unheard of, sadly, for individuals experiencing acute emotional trauma or shock to enter a dissociative state. The physical blow, while unresponsive, and the subsequent abandonment clearly constitute neglect, possibly mistreatment." Rhonda suddenly interjected. "Arthur, remember Billy Johnson? The older kid who used to bully you in the park?" "Bro." I nodded slowly. "Mom and Dad told me once they found me just lying on the grass, completely out of it after he'd been teasing me. Took me home, put me to bed. I woke up the next morning fine." "Bro, they never thought much of it," Rhonda said. "But yeah, I remember," I murmured. "Billy pushed me down. Everything went fuzzy. Woke up in my bed. It seems plausible," the psychologist mused, "that a similar, albeit much more severe, protective mechanism kicked in when faced with overwhelming emotional distress." He smiled gently at the women surrounding my bed. "With this support system, I suspect you'll recover well." He left, and fatigue washed over me, heavy and profound despite the 2 weeks' sleep. I convinced the women to go home, promising to call if I needed anything. Rest. I needed rest and time to process the crater Annie had blasted into my life. The next couple of days were about regaining strength. Tina, ever efficient, brought my work laptop, assigning simple tasks just to keep your brain engaged, she'd said with a wink. Rhonda visited daily, armed with amended divorce papers and documents requiring my signature. She was now officially my lawyer, her usual sisterly affection sharpened by a lawyer's predatory focus when discussing Annie. She hired a shark, Arthur, but a sloppy one. "Charges a fortune. You've got the best, and with a 100% family discount," she'd grin fiercely. Rhonda also brought Detective Karen Hill, a sharp, observant woman who questioned me thoroughly about the events leading up to my collapse, focusing on Annie's actions and words. Her report, she assured us, would be forthcoming. Rhonda advised leaving any potential charges against Annie entirely in her hands for now. On the afternoon of the second day post-awakening, I was discharged. Sally drove me, but Tina met us at the hospital entrance, her presence a surprising comfort. She helped Sally get me settled into her spacious, comfortable SUV. That evening, Tina stayed for dinner. Takeout pizza, eaten casually in the living room. She helped clean up, lingered to watch a mindless sitcom with us. As she prepared to leave, Sally gave her a hug. I walked her to her car, the newly awkward silence stretching between us. Tina, thank you, I said, the words inadequate. For everything. The hospital visits, keeping Sally sane, just being here. I don't know how to repay you. She turned, smiling under the porch light, her blue eyes sparkling. Well, she said lightly, maybe in a few weeks, when you're feeling up to it, you could take me out to dinner, maybe dancing. My heart did a strange little lurch, discharged hours ago and already navigating potential dating territory. But it was Tina, strong, kind, beautiful Tina, whose kiss had apparently jolted me back to reality. Okay, I managed, feeling my cheeks warm. Next Friday gives me almost 2 weeks to practice being vertical. She nodded, her smile widening. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped closer and hugged me, a firm, warm embrace that lingered just a fraction longer than strictly friendly. I felt a jolt, a connection that went beyond boss-employee or concerned friend. As she got into her car, I caught myself wondering, ridiculously, what that woman I'd been married to for 25 years was even doing right now. Her name felt foreign, disconnected from the man I was becoming in the wreckage. Life settled into a new, tentative rhythm. Sally, Rhonda, and Tina formed a protective cordon around me. Rhonda handled the increasingly messy divorce proceedings. Annie, apparently spurred on by Paul, was making outlandish demands. 60% of assets, hefty spousal support, even trying to claw back past bonuses from Tina's company. Rhonda dealt with it ruthlessly, a single steely phone call to Annie's lawyer seemingly shutting down the most ridiculous claims. My Friday nights with Tina became a fixed point. Sally often babysat Tina's 8-year-old daughter Clarissa, giving us space. We went to quiet restaurants, took walks, talked for hours. We kept things platonic. A hand held across the table, a brief hug goodnight. But the undercurrent was undeniable, a slow burn building between us. Brochure, I returned to work, easing back into my accounting role. The office buzzed with quiet speculation about Tina and me, but mostly people were just glad to see me back, albeit slightly more subdued than my usual office clown persona. Tom, my direct manager, discreetly ensured professional boundaries were maintained. About 3.5 months after I woke up, Rhonda confirmed the divorce would be finalized the following Thursday. No trial, just paperwork. Annie, however, requested a final meeting to talk, stipulating the day before the decree became official. Reluctantly, I agreed. She would come to the house, see Sally and me. I took the afternoon off, preparing lamb chops, dumplings, and gravy, an old family favorite, hoping familiar food might smooth the jagged edges of the conversation. Sally got home around 5:30, showered, and changed. The doorbell rang just before 6. Standing on the porch was Annie, and I recoiled internally. The woman I remembered, even in her anger a few months ago, was gone. Annie had always been attractive, curvy, carrying a few extra pounds she perpetually fussed over but wore well. A great figure, vibrant energy. The woman before me was inflated, significantly overweight, her face puffy with jowls, her familiar curves lost beneath layers of loose, shapeless clothing, a heavy belly straining against the fabric of her pants. The change was shocking, almost grotesque. My surprise must have shown. She winced, but didn't comment as I numbly invited her in. We sat in the living room, an awkward silence punctuated by my offer of wine, which she accepted readily. Small talk faltered. She asked about work, if I was taking care of myself. I returned the pleasantries, biting back any comment on her appearance. It's what Paul wants, she mumbled, noticing my gaze, answering the unspoken question. He didn't like me skinny, said he prefers more cushion. She shrugged, a gesture devoid of its former vivacity. Briefer, I frowned. Despite everything, a flicker of concern for her health remained. 25 years don't vanish overnight. No, Annie, I don't, I said honestly. When we were together, you were healthy, vibrant. Frankly, your appearance is shocking. You don't look well. If things weren't the way they are, I'd be worried. But, I added, the hardness returning, you made your choices. Ibri, her face fell. You and Sally, you're fine without me, aren't you? Ibri, we're managing, I conceded. A part of me will always care, Annie. But when you walked out of here, leaving me potentially dying on the floor, I let the sentence hang. She sighed, looking down at her hands. I deserved that. I did a terrible thing, didn't I? Yes, Mom, you did. Sally appeared in the doorway, her voice cold as ice. She'd showered and changed, but her anger hadn't dissipated. You did a damn terrible thing. You blew up our family, abandoned Dad when he was helpless, and walked away without a backward glance. I honestly can't believe Dad even let you step foot in this house tonight. Sally, calm down, I interjected, though I shared her sentiment. Your mother knows the situation. She asked for this meeting. Let's try to be civil. Abra, Sally subsided, but her glare remained fixed on Annie, radiating hostility. Dinner was a tense affair, punctuated by the clinking of silverware and unspoken resentment. Sally picked at her food, her gaze never leaving her mother's face. After the plates were cleared, Annie turned to Sally. Sally, I wanted to talk to you alone first. No, Sally stated flatly, definitively. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of Dad. Annie looked momentarily taken aback, then nodded, resigned. She took a deep breath. Okay, Sally, I wanted to ask you to forgive me for what I did. I handled everything terribly wrong. No matter what's happened between your father and me, I don't want to lose my daughter. She glanced at me. There's something else, but I'd rather... Abri, Mom, Sally cut her off firmly. If you can't say it to both of us, I don't want to hear it. Without waiting for a response, Sally stood abruptly and walked out of the room. A moment later, her bedroom door slammed shut upstairs. Broof. I hoped this would go better, Annie murmured, mostly to herself. Given the circumstances, I think it went about as well as could be expected, I replied, coolly. She looked up, surprised I'd heard. Really? Ibru? Yes, really, I sighed, leaning back. Annie, you need to understand the reality here. You aren't liked in this house right now. She started to protest, but I held up a hand. Let me finish. You carried on a months-long affair. You lied to both me and Sally. You ambushed me with divorce papers. When I was clearly in shock, incapacitated, you screamed at me and then hit me. Her eyes widened, deer-in-headlights fear flashing across her face. Oh yes, I remember most of it right up until the slap. Then you abandoned me, leaving me alone for hours until Sally found me. You showed zero concern for my well-being when Sally called you, terrified. You made ridiculous extortion attempts against my employer. And now you show up here, ostensibly for reconciliation, but your first move is trying to divide and conquer. And you ask Sally for forgiveness, but you haven't actually said the words I'm sorry to her, have you? I paused, letting the weight of it sink in. So yes, Annie, all things considered, this went remarkably well. Tears welled in Annie's eyes, trembling on her lashes, but not yet falling. Were they for Sally, for me, or for the mess she'd made of her own life? The divorce is final tomorrow, I continued, my voice devoid of emotion. If there's nothing else pertinent, I think this meeting is concluded. I stood and walked to the front door, opening it pointedly. She rose slowly, heavily, and walked toward the door. On the threshold, she turned back. Arthur, we did have some good years, didn't we? A pang of something, nostalgia, loss, hit me. Yes, Annie, we did. Most of our time together was good. You were a good wife, a loving mother. I looked at her then, truly looked at the wreckage Paul had made. I don't know what that parasite did to your head, but the woman standing in front of me, she's not the Annie I married. She's a shadow, manipulated into becoming this. I gestured vaguely at her altered form. Selfish, careless of the damage she inflicts. A Brie. She looked down at her feet again. You really mean that? It wasn't a question. Ebru, yes. Ebru, she turned to leave, then hesitated one last time, looking utterly broken. Arthur, about the house, the money. Paul said I should ask for... Brika, there it was, the real reason for the visit. Not forgiveness, money. A bitter laugh escaped me. Annie looked startled. Go tell Paul, I said, my voice hard as flint, that tomorrow your share of the savings and the house equity will be transferred to the account your lawyer provided Rhonda. And, Annie, she looked up, apprehension in her eyes, keep that money away from him. Hide it, because if you give him access it'll be gone before you blink. She nodded mutely and walked out into the night. The next morning, the final decree arrived electronically. Annie Smith and Arthur Smith were no more. A small buried part of me felt a twinge of sadness for the life that was, but it was overwhelmed by relief. Freedom. At 48, I had a future again. Rhonda called to confirm the fund transfer was complete. That evening, pizza was ordered, and Rhonda, Tina, Clarissa, and Sally gathered at the house to celebrate my official freedom. Later, after Sally had taken Clarissa home and Rhonda had left, Tina stayed. The charged silence stretched, filled with unspoken anticipation. That night, the platonic phase of our relationship ended definitively and passionately. The weekend passed in a blissful blur of rediscovery, both emotional and physical. Tina's slight squeak when she sat down on Monday morning, coupled with the possessive fire in her eyes, told me I'd done something right. Abrahé life accelerated. Clearing out the last vestiges of Annie's presence from the house felt cathartic. One rainy Saturday, tackling boxes piled in the spare room closet, I unearthed my old desktop computer from college days, long since replaced and forgotten. Mostly junk on it. Old essays, grainy photos. But then curiosity piqued. I booted it up, the old machine groaning in protest. I remember dabbling in cryptocurrency years ago, buying something called Bitcoin on a whim when it was practically worthless, more as a tech novelty than an investment. I'd stored the wallet details on this machine, then completely forgotten when I upgraded. Finding the wallet file was easy, accessing it was another matter, password protected. Hours passed, trying old combinations, pet names, significant dates, nothing. Frustration mounted. I was about to give up, ready to haul the ancient tower to the recycling center, when a random memory fragment surfaced, a complex passphrase tied to an obscure sci-fi novel I had loved back then. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Access granted. My heart hammered against my ribs. The wallet opened, a string of characters, and then the balance. It took a moment to register. The number of bitcoins wasn't huge, but the current market value. I quickly pulled up an exchange site on my laptop, plugged in the number. The dollar figure that flashed back seemed impossible. I checked another exchange, then another. My hands started shaking. I felt sweat prickle my forehead. $37,248,010. $37 million. I leaned back against the wall, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor, the dusty computer tower humming beside me. Disbelief warred with a dawning, terrifying realization. I was rich, staggeringly, life-alteringly rich. A hysterical giggle escaped me, quickly choked off. Years ago, a forgotten digital gamble, now a fortune. The irony was staggering. Annie had left me for pennies, metaphorically speaking, while millions sat dormant on a relic in the closet. The world tilted slightly. This changed everything. Telling Sally was surreal. I sat her down, showed her the screen. Her eyes went wide, her jaw dropped. "Dad, is that real?" Disbelief, then shock, then a slow, wondering smile spread across her face. "Oh my God, Dad! Oh my God!" There were tears, questions, excited chatter. It wasn't just about the money, it was about security, possibility, a future suddenly brighter after so much darkness. Telling Tina came a few weeks later, after another blissful Friday night curled up together on the sofa. It felt right, a testament to the trust and future we were building. I showed her the wallet balance on my laptop. She stared, blinked, then looked at me, her expression a mixture of astonishment and something else. Careful consideration. "Arthur. Wow, that's incredible." There was no grasping, no calculation in her eyes, just genuine surprise and perhaps a touch of concern for how such wealth might change things. We talked late into the night about what it meant, about responsibility, about keeping it quiet for now. Her grounded reaction solidified my certainty about her. News like that, however, rarely stays truly secret, especially when lawyers are involved in setting up trusts and financial structures. Somehow, inevitably, the gossip filtered through the legal grapevine back to Annie. It was a Tuesday evening. I'd just gotten home, loosening my tie, when the doorbell rang insistently, repeatedly. I opened it to find Annie on the doorstep, her face contorted in a mask of fury and entitlement. Paul hovered behind her on the sidewalk, looking smug and predatory. "Arthur, you didn't tell me," she shrieked, trying to push past me into the house. Our house, the one we'd paid off together, the equity split finalized months ago. Her entry now was trespass. "I tell you what, Annie," I asked calmly, blocking her way. "Birthlay the money, the Bitcoin. Rhonda let it slip to my lawyer. You hid millions from me. That's marital property. I deserve half. What I owned before we separated, especially something forgotten from years ago, isn't automatically marital property, Annie, especially after you signed the final settlement. It's over. You need to leave. You owe me, she screamed, desperation making her reckless. She shoved me hard, trying to force her way in. I stood firm. Paul took a step forward, menacingly. Suddenly, Annie's eyes darted to the side, fixating on the small decorative shovel Sally used for her potted plants near the door. Before I could react, she snatched it, swinging it wildly. I raised my arm instinctively to block. The metal edge connected sharply with my forearm, sending a jolt of searing pain through me. Blood welled instantly. Adrenaline surged. I shoved her back hard. She stumbled off the porch, landing heavily on the lawn, the shovel clattering beside her. Paul started toward me but stopped as I pulled out my phone, dialing emergency with my good hand. I've been attacked. My ex-wife attacked me with a shovel. Send police immediately. Annie scrambled to her feet, wild-eyed, as sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Paul grabbed her arm, pulling her toward their car. They sped off just as the first police cruiser rounded the corner. The officers took my statement, photographed my bleeding arm, which required stitches later, and documented the scene. A warrant was issued for Annie's arrest. Attack with a tool. She was picked up later that night. The repercussions were swift and ugly. A few nights later, I woke to the sound of crackling and shouting. Rushing to the window, I saw my sedan engulfed in flames in the driveway, neighbors gathering on the street. Arson. It wasn't hard to guess who was responsible. Abraham enough was enough. The next day, I hired a top-tier private investigator and instructed Rhonda to pursue every legal avenue. The PI quickly found footage from a neighbor's security camera, grainy but clear enough, showing Paul, hooded but identifiable, sneaking up to my car, dousing it with accelerant, and setting it ablaze before fleeing. The legal machinery ground into motion. Rhonda prepared lawsuits against both Annie and Paul for the assault, property destruction, conspiracy, and emotional distress. Then came the roadside attack. I was driving home late from the office one evening, taking a quieter back road. Suddenly, headlights flared in my rearview mirror, blinding me. A dark, nondescript sedan tailgated aggressively before swerving sharply in front, forcing me to slam on the brakes. Simultaneously, another car blocked me from behind. Two men jumped out of the front car, yanking open my driver's side door before I could even react. "Get out, wallet!" Now one snarled, his face obscured by a beanie pulled low. Not Paul, not Annie. Hired thugs. "Abra, what wallet?" I stalled, my mind racing, heart pounding against my ribs. "Abra, with the crypto wallet, asshole. The keys. Where are they? Give them up." Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but anger surged hotter. They knew. Annie and Paul must have sent them. This wasn't just about divorce bitterness anymore. It was dangerous. In the trunk, locked in a secure case, was my .357 Magnum, legally owned, which I'd taken to the range earlier that week and hadn't yet unloaded back into the house safe. A risky thought, but maybe my only chance. "Brick, okay, I stammered, feigning terror. "It's in the trunk, in a briefcase." The second thug, keeping an eye on the road, grunted. "Get it quick." My hands shook as I popped the trunk release. I got out slowly, hands raised slightly. One thug followed me closely, the other watched the road. At the trunk, I fumbled with the case locks, my fingers slick with sweat. Clicking it open, I didn't reach for the non-existent briefcase. I grabbed the heavy Magnum, the cold steel a solid reality in my hand. Spinning around, I raised the weapon, not aiming directly at them but pointing it skyward. "Get the hell away from my car now." They froze, eyes wide with shock above their masks. The sight of the powerful handgun clearly wasn't part of their plan. I fired 2 shots into the air. The roar of the Magnum echoed deafeningly in the quiet night. That broke their nerve. They scrambled back into their sedan, tires screeching as they executed a clumsy U-turn and sped off into the darkness. The car behind me peeled out in the opposite direction. Brick shaking uncontrollably, adrenaline turning my legs to jelly, I got back in my car, locked the doors, and immediately called Rhonda, then the PI. The connection was undeniable. Annie and Paul were behind this, escalating from demands and vandalism to outright violent robbery attempts. The next day, on Rhonda's and the PI's advice, I hired professional security guards for the house. We consolidated all the evidence, police reports from the shovel attack and the arson, the PI's footage of Paul burning the car, my testimony about the roadside ambush, financial records showing Annie's desperation post-divorce settlement depletion, likely by Paul, The attempted robbery, linked back to them through motive and timing, added severe felony charges to their growing list. The legal battle was brutal but decisive. Annie and Paul, facing overwhelming evidence for assault, arson, conspiracy, and attempted robbery, had little defense. Their lawyers attempted plea bargains, but fueled by the escalating attacks and the threat to my life, I refused any deal that didn't involve significant jail time. Rhonda was relentless in court, presenting a clear narrative of greed, betrayal, and violent desperation. The divorce was already final, a clean break, legally sealed before the worst of the attacks. The subsequent criminal trials were swift. Annie, weeping and portraying herself as manipulated by Paul, received a lesser but still substantial sentence due to her direct involvement in the assault and conspiracy. Paul, identified definitively in the arson and implicated as the ringleader in the robbery attempt, got a much longer term. Life moved on, scarred but not broken. A year later, Tina and I stood before a small gathering of friends, family, and colleagues beside a tranquil lake, bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun. We exchanged vows, simple words carrying profound weight. Sally stood beside Tina, radiant. Clarissa, our flower girl, beamed. It wasn't about erasing the past, but building a new, stronger future on solid ground. Annie and Paul remained incarcerated, their choices leading them to concrete walls, while ours led us here, to love and rebuilding. The $37 million managed wisely provided security, but the true wealth was found not in a forgotten digital wallet, but in the resilience of love, the loyalty of family, and the quiet strength discovered in the face of betrayal.